TEDxYouth to the Coast Salish for having me on these lands. Osyo, Skano, Nyawet Skano, Hat Murawe, Itsiaya. Raven Two Feathers Teedsdot to all Ched Pueblo, Danat, and Apache territory. Chelagi, Chechida, Onot Doaga, Chechida Gai Kono, Chechida Namana. Hello, my name is Raven Two Feathers. I'm originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am Cherokee, Seneca, Cayuga, and Comanche. I wish to thank and introduce myself to the people of this place, the Coast Salish, in the Lushootseed language. You'll hear some Lushootseed in this piece as a way to tie this modern-day tale back to traditional storytelling ways. And as with old stories, take the lessons necessary for you at this point in your life and use them to make positive change for yourself and others. Imagine if you were constantly uplifted and cared for by your community. Imagine you didn't have to worry about who would take care of the kids, or if you would have a place to stay or have food for tomorrow, let alone tonight. Imagine feeling not just safe, but deeply listened to, respected, trusted, and embraced for who you are as an individual. Imagine if we could all experience this. A long time ago, a caring community was a reality. Currently, these are hard-fought community values we have held onto through over 500 years of continued, persistent genocide. When I was young, I knew I was different, but I didn't quite have the words for it. Existing was already validation of who I was. I was still learning about the world and was fascinated by the stars. There were so many shifting shapes and patterns to be seen. Then the West told me the one true name and shape I should see, never the piles of possibilities from different cultures, least of all the peoples I come from. In my gut, I felt I wasn't really like the other kids or what I saw on TV. Moving around didn't help either, usually only staying a few years in each state as my mom's academic career took off. This unenrolled, chubby-cheeked, intertribal, queer left-handed punster had a hard time with shifting landscapes when I could hardly wrap my mind around who I was. I assumed I'd take the role of the gorgeous Brendan Fraser in The Mummy, but the female version, with Rachel Weisz by my side. Everyone said I was female after all. It wasn't until puberty that I had to reckon with gender. My boobs came in, and so did realizing this wasn't me. I longed for bare-chested me running through the backyard, but they just kept coming. And I thought I had to deal. Then college came about, I went to film school and chugged along with my girlfriend until life came tumbling down. Trauma hit. Death, adultery, abuse of all forms left me lost. Worse, it left me numb and suicidal. When you hit your lowest low, a lot of things become apparent. I learned quite a bit my junior year, most of all what it means to live how I want, even with the high rates of violence against trans and Native people, let alone those at the center. Not wanting to taint the renewed life that I was entering, I left behind many of those who had caused me harm in college, and I began to socially and medically transition. Despite top surgery, I was quite the boob to think I knew everything about myself. Mind you, I grew up all over the place, with some connection to culture, but definitely not traditional. Even when I was young, I thought I'd have to choose between being queer and being Native. I always chose Native, feeling some sense of not being able to see myself fully. On my 23rd birthday, a family friend invited me to an elders honoring dinner only for two spirits. And they were bestowing a title upon me that I didn't think I had the training or traditional knowledge for, but I trusted their judgment and my gut. Two-Spirit is translated from the Anishinaabe-Moan term Nij Manaduog, which at a 1989 conference of Native LGBTQ people became the unofficial umbrella term for this continent's many names of genders and unique spiritual roles they held. It replaced the previously inaccurate, offensive, mistranslated French term that had been used in anthropological works. Northern Cheyenne journalist and writer Adrienne Jawort said it best, "We are a minority within a minority." But we are an integral niche within Indigenous communities, keeping the balance and healing the peoples. Hearing a cafeteria full of elders talk about how people like us have always existed and we're honored for our unique strengths, it made everything click so perfectly. I felt normal. Prayer has rooted us to the earth as much as people around us. Words of wisdom and teachings absorbed from elders who have learned their bodies and minds over years of being. While it was only one person who extended an invitation to me, that one person, Itai Jeffries, has brought me into a community and world I didn't even realize I needed. A place to be myself without having to choose who I am. Then I felt the righteous rage of not feeling seen in full for decades. Something had to change. When COVID-19 hit, the Native community collectively braced for yet another wave of germ warfare. We once again relied on each other to survive this pandemic. When my aunt at the Urban Indian Health Institute asked county, state, and federal health agencies for PPE, she received body bags. According to the CDC, compared to white people, Native Americans are 3.5 times more likely to contract COVID and over 10 times more likely to die from it. Because of the conditions enforced upon us and our intergenerational homes, we are made the most vulnerable population in the United States. They assumed we would die off. With all the trauma inflicted on Native peoples, many have forgotten the old ways and how to treat one another, especially those not like them. From wars to famine to loss of kin, we have always had a network of people to call family as we traveled and traded across the continents. We still are family, that much we remember, even though not all family is safe, let alone tolerant. When 2020's toilet paper shortages hit and food was scarce, Natives were checking in on elders, making sure we all had enough to eat, and keeping spirits high or at least buoyant. Not being ones to let things fester, despite killing the buffalo, hunting and fishing restrictions until the 1990s, and starvation-sized food rations on lockdown reservations, Natives have always had the joy and obligation to feed one another. Again, we're not ones to waste or let things fester, and so my aunt turned those body bags into a dress uplifting murdered and missing Indigenous women. We do what we can, even when we have been made to have the least. While making sure to keep my grandma safe, I did what I could to serve the community that allowed me to blossom. Food vouchers and food boxes for Native Two-Spirit elders and families to gift cards with no strings attached, we continued to uplift our relations. Beyond bodily necessities, I worked with Itai, Hank Cooper, and Na'ilahi Fund to create a space and cultural curriculum where Two-Spirit and IndigiQueer youth can use their voice and hear others like them. More recently, we've gathered to sing, eat, drum, and laugh to remind us that we are all still here, whether in spirit or physical form, human bodies mixed with, fed by, and from the elements around us. I've come to see the area between individual and community are blurred. When one person in a drum group takes the lead for a round, one out of the many is given room and honored for what they bring, adding to the overall group's power. But when one voice attempts to steer the group into its way of doing things, breakdown happens. Ego-focused individuality and the few sacrificing the many does not work. Since time immemorial, the peoples of this place have focused to steward the land with a few principles best said by LaDonna Harris. Relationship, responsibility, reciprocity, and redistribution. These environments are created when individuals recognize their ever-evolving place in their communities. I am one of a community of individuals working to recognize and realize the places we are embraced. A friend who passed about a year ago, LL, an Afro-Latinx birthwork activist who's joined the stars, had this to say. Disabled, trans, cis, queer, non-binary, gender non-conforming, intersex people have existed always. Since we were stardust, our mission is to return to that, maybe not completely in our lifetimes, but to build towards that. We mimic the stars, so many shapes and shifting patterns to be seen. From the elements of us being formed in the body of a star to mingling on earth while we are separate, we cannot exist without one another. No matter who you are, reconnect with your roots and live in remembrance of the beings you have, do, and will impact. With each of us individually, collectively doing what we can, the case for all of our futures shall surely be even brighter than it was. To all Turi Tuhak, a long time ago.